Awesome. So, Jim, nice to have you back. I was looking at the last time we chatted, and it was in November, and it's crazy how we're more than midway through this year. So time flies, and that time, just for anyone is a lot of time. But especially when you look at the technology world and healthcare, so many things happen at rapid speed. So I'm super excited to have you back and have a discussion about some of the things that you've been working on since we last spoke, and kind of catch up. For those of us that may need some brushing up on your background, can you kind of give us a quick summary of what you do in your day to day, and we'll kind of take it from there?
Yeah, sounds great. And great to see you always, as always. And I appreciate you having me back. So I'm the CEO of Acoer. We are a software development company. The way I think of what we do and how we go to market really is build software as a service. And very much with the idea of trying to improve certain areas of healthcare that we're aware of, clinical research as example, public health, improve usability, but then also at the same time impute computational trust. Build in, abstract is a word that I use. Computational trust, use public ledgers, distributed ledger technology to improve transparency, to where it makes sense, have immutability, improve compliance, improve auditability reporting, all these things that are really necessary as part of being in healthcare and an ethical healthcare organization. But we'll do all that stuff really kind of effectively do it as software is functioning in whatever purpose we're building it for. So it's all happening behind the scenes, and it's all happening in real time. That's really our vision. That's what we've been building software for the last several years, and continue to do so.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I've been kind of following you on LinkedIn and some of the projects that you have shared and talked about, and you're very active. And one of the things that I've seen is HealthReady, a project that you're working on. And it's interesting because it kind of merges scientific research and medicine, and then a lot of the technologies that you just spoke about. And so, without me kind of butchering what HealthReady does or anything, can you tell me what the goal of HealthReady is, and what kind of led you to start that project, and share more about that?
Yeah, certainly. So HealthReady really is a startup. It's, I would say, a kind of a intersection of healthcare and technology startup. We have been involved. We as an Acoer have been involved with the principals for a number of years. It's nothing in healthcare really happens that quickly. That it takes quite a lot of time. So it seems like we have been building things in recent weeks or months, but really it's been several years actually that kind of slowly working on this, and both proving certain angles of the business and technology, but also frankly for the company to for HealthReady to raise the funds and get researchers and potential patient communities interested in things like this. But really the idea behind HealthReady, at least in its current incarnation, is a way through a mobile phone as well as simple desktop experience to have patients interact with HealthReady, and then in turn HealthReady to ethically, in a compliant way, privacy-preserving way, aggregated way, to provide consented information from those patients to clinical researchers. And the focus over the last year and a half really has been around this area of clinical research for orphan drug development. So novel drug development and particularly some of the rare forms of cancer. As I'm sure you know, and probably the audience does as well, it's an area where it's difficult to find the patients and communities, and to find for them to go through the inclusion-exclusion criteria. Oftentimes it's hard to reach the underserved, that there are biases that are built in for various reasons due to inability to find your control groups and all kinds of things like this. But then at the same time, there's another movement, and this is where really the DLT blockchain angle also fits in. but this movement really precipitated through the Cures Act, where patients now, or users, if you like, have much more ability to get to their health data through whatever device of choice, whether it's my chart, and I'm from a healthcare provider, or whether it's through a mobile app like the one that we have built with HealthReady, and through their consent, basically copy or synchronize a health record, and then as they choose to share it with whoever they want to, and then our whole angle is, can we do that really in a kind of a overtly compliant way, in a way where the consent is captured electronically and is proven using cryptography, so you don't have to take like Jim's word for it or your word or anyone's. There's a public ledger kind of encrypted, if you like, reference to this that proves that we have literally receive Jim's consent for synchronizing the health record, or for sharing certain elements of the health record for this period of time, for this particular topic, with HealthReady or with researchers and things like this. So that's really the basic idea. And over the last 6 months or so, HealthReady has been kind of basically I guess working on and has now kind of pushed to the Apple's the App Store, as well as the Google Play Store, a mobile app version of the original platform that's been around for a couple of years now, but one that's focused specifically on patients with neuroblastoma. So children with, I guess, neuroblastoma is a deadly form of cancer, unfortunately. It's a small community, but it's one that the outreach needs to be effective, and that's really the idea, is engage with those patients, the children, through their parents and guardian, and have that ethical process of the consent and the sharing of information, asking the right questions, making it relevant to the phase of treatment that they're in, particularly things such as relapse, which we found out as we were building the application, that it really is a very, very important and kind of overlooked area when it comes to the actual day-to-day interaction of these patients or their guardians, within the clinical community. Is what happens when you have a relapse, and where is an online community that helps people understand some of the exceptions and how to perhaps connect to researchers in different ways, and all of that were really elements of us building this and then connecting with the right community. So that's where HealthReady is, and I think that the next chapter for HealthReady is to take this kind of app that we have built, that's been, like I mentioned, production for a couple of months now, and really evolve it to additional kinds of use cases, particularly around this orphan drug development, rare cancer, maybe continuing with more work around pediatric forms of pediatric cancer, because when you're talking about anything pediatric, there's a much greater degree of work that you have to do in terms of making sure that you're ethical, making sure you're capturing the right kinds of consent, because many times you're working with guardians on behalf of children, and to make sure all of that is done in a way that then allows a transition at some point, for this records to go to the actual owner of it, and so on. So there was quite a bit of nuance that we had to go through, more so than just, if you're dealing with an adult use case.
Absolutely. Yeah, you touched on so many things that are burdensome and lead to lots of bureaucracy and issues when it comes to clinical trials and research, and people being able to join them or find out that they don't qualify when they may have done a bunch of legwork, or in some cases even like traveling to certain areas and then they found out they're not qualified. And it's very one-sided, I think, and it kind of contradicts your statement, to both sides, right? So like if you're the patient or someone trying to get into a trial, or maybe sign up for a program, there may not be funding for that, or you may not qualify, and and because there's not funding for that program, or attention's not on that specific disease, you may not be able to get anywhere. And then the same thing from the research side. your institution or where you're able to get grants from may be directed towards a certain disease, and you may want to work on something else, but that's not possible. And so it seems like both sides are stuck. Can you speak to, and you obviously alluded to neuroblastoma, speak to how HealthReady tries to change that, where, say there is a orphan disease or a drug that hasn't been developed for a certain type of cancer, how would this kind of facilitate that and make that easier than what the current process is?
Yeah, it is complex without that, and it is without, again, not to kind of slighten the operational element. There are a lot of, checks and balances, right, for all kinds of good reasons, but there's also a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of redundancy. And really our vision is, can we make it really two things? One, more efficient, and then two, more accountable. And I think that they're not really the same thing, right? Just because you can make it more efficient doesn't mean it's necessarily more accountable, nor vice versa. So, when it comes to efficiency, really a lot of it is things that we know are, redundant, you shouldn't do. As example, why should a patient have to, for the 11th time, pretty much input the same information, whether it's on an online form or a kiosk or on a piece of paper? This happens. I mean, this happens to kind of regular doctor visits, much less in this kind of scenario where it's much more intrusive, requires a lot more information, right? And also, frankly, many times you don't remember the details. So remembering, the exact procedures or the exact medicine you took, or any number of other, kind of esoteric details, 2 or 3 months down the line, particularly for, like guardians who are dealing with a lot of stress and things like this, in practical terms, leads to a lot of errors. So our whole thing really with that is capturing information digitally, synchronizing with health records where possible, both in terms of connecting to the backend health data sources through FHIR, the Path Healthcare Interoperability Resources APIs, and really and specifically with patient consent. Because if you don't have patient consent, and that consent is not basically up to date, and it's contextual, then effectively can go through all this and get to a point where you still, the information is useless because you cannot do clinical trials or aggregation of records without that explicit consent. So that's really the patient side and being more efficient in that way. The accountable side, I think, is really, it's twofold also. I think the more conventional really piece is when we go to researchers and we say, like, here's a anonymized aggregate report of these these like 100 patients with these comorbidities and these kind of biomarkers that you're looking for or areas of interest, that they can actually trust that. They can say, okay, well, where is this coming from? And we can prove that, and it's, the accountability comes from even simple things such as authenticity of the data and authenticity of data flow. And we do that largely with really two things: with using open APIs that have been proven and then can be interrogated, but then at the same time embedding or abstracting what we call data sampling, but basically putting references on the public, encrypted references on the public ledger that prove who did what when. That's kind of the simple idea. But really, that's kind of the one angle is the accountability to a researcher that they can trust this data and it's relevant. But the other side, and to me, this is the really exciting side, is actually allowing the individuals this idea of their own data ownership. So if they want to take that data and do other things with it, such as share it with maybe some other apps, or with a healthcare provider or some other HCP, or with perhaps other researchers, maybe their next of kin, their family members. Any of those things now become much more practicable, right? And now become, because it's already digital and the consent is captured, and you can, with consent, share that information. And again, we behind the scenes capture all this, and basically we show our homework. We'll put it on a ledger, and there's an encrypted reference. But the real kind of, I think, if you project beyond just one, one interaction to multiple interactions, or perhaps multiple conditions over the course of time, our whole angle is we can incentivize and motivate patients, using, for instance, usable tokenization or incentivization, which doesn't necessarily have to be just money-based. It could be in kind, it could be in terms of, like offline services. So it's not just about like giving them tokens. That's a very, I think, reductive and caricature understanding of tokenization. There's a lot more nuance to it, but we can do it, but effectively always. I mean, if you want to play it out and say, what does it look like in the real world? It could and probably would look like an airline royalty program, like a mileage program. The more you interact, the more mileage you accrue, the more your profile grows, the more value there is in that. But then you are the owner of it, and it can become a win-win scenario, not just a one-way where everything is dictated by the healthcare provider or the clinical research outfit. So that's the vision that we're building towards with HealthReady, and the so what behind like doing the blockchain and the open technologies and all this consent tracking and all of that. And I think to us, again, you got to take baby steps to get there, and to make things more efficient and at least show consent is the path to that direction. But there's a bigger picture as well.
Absolutely. That was going to be one of my questions was, why is this better than a non-blockchain solution? And you kind of explained exactly that, being able to prove that the work you're doing, being able to track consents, and then being able to give patients ownership of their data. And as we know, data is king when it comes to, something as simple as searching for Google and Google knowing you're interested in this thing, to the most sacred of data, which is health data, and actually getting, something in return for that, which is not how the system is set up currently. And so those are all perfect examples of why, the blockchain and cryptographic technologies being used here make this different than, just a normal app that may not have that, or a data aggregation type of platform. I guess one.
I apologize to interrupt you. Can I continue with just one quick point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you will, and I know you hear this a lot, and I do as well, because this conversation comes up with, for instance, the usual suspect healthcare provider vendors, right? Which is to say that they claim, well, we have audit logs, we record transactions, and they, if somebody, if the European government comes and they want to show compliance to GDPR, we can do it. And all that may be true. I don't, honestly, from my personal experience, what they say versus what they're actually able to do is very different. And there's a huge difference between doing something under an e-discovery exercise that costs millions of dollars and it's very reactive versus proactively doing it. But that aside, even if they could do it, I think the big thing here is this. And frankly, it's the same scenario that applies to Facebook. If all of the data is sitting within one organization, right? Effectively, that organization controls the data. And we know this on the technology side. As an administrator, no matter what kind of data you have access to, you can pretty much change it. Like the root access to any database system can change the data, period. I mean, that's just one of the almost, not 100%, nothing is 100%, but 99% of the cases, that is the truth. And what we're saying is that's not really certainly that's not the sentiment of what people are saying, and it really should not be the truth of it either. The truth should be that, if you're saying it, whatever it is that you're saying, that you, for instance, you had the patient's consent, is completely provable, and it's provable on demand, and it's provable without, pomp and circumstance, and without having to take somebody's word for it, without having to do a lawsuit, because for the mere mortal, those are not real options. Those are like, none of those things are practical, though in theory they may be doable. So our whole thing is and not when I say our, I don't mean just myself and Acoer. I think many people like yourself, kind of understand the nuance here, is when you have an immutable public ledger and you use it correctly, and there's a big, again, I don't want to make this caricature. You could definitely use it poorly. You could, nobody in their right mind would advocate putting patient data publicly, or in clear text on a public ledger. That would make no sense, and it breaks all kinds of HIPAA and other kinds of policies and regulations. But there are ways in which you can ethically reference data that's sitting within a private, secure, HIPAA compliant system. And that's really our angle is we're in a place where we don't need to take one entity's word for these things. We can use smarter, and still usable technologies, affordable technologies to prove this out. And if we do this correctly, it's really good for everyone, because no company going through an e-discovery that may cost, I don't know, just let's say $10 million just in attorney's fees alone, which is, I mean, that's probably an under exaggeration. We want to go through that exercise. That's not a fun exercise for anyone.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the point where, a lot of people, they maybe go to Wikipedia, read like the top line of what blockchain is, and they say like, oh, it's like a public ledger and whatnot. And then you talk about healthcare and they think you're putting this health data on this public ledger, which is definitely not what's happening. And so that's a good point to remind everyone of. Out of curiosity, why start with the focus of HealthReady on neuroblastoma? And I guess you kind of alluded to some of it, where the relapse cases do not have enough attention and resources and I guess energy there. But is that the reason, or are there other reasons?
Yeah, honestly, I think that the primary, there were a few reasons, but the primary reason really was that just being practical. We had a partnership with an outfit called Cure Chain. They have through a lot of charity work that they had done, a foundation that has been in place called the Beckley Foundation for many years. They have done a lot of work with children with neuroblastoma. So there was a community that they had already built. They were very passionate about this. We had access to, and most importantly, and I know you know this always, most importantly, we had access to real patient advocates, people, basically, in fact, physicians with their own children who have gone and had gone through this cycle. So in many ways that allowed us to build for real, as opposed to build something that was more generic and then try and figure out, well, how do we adapt it to a particular use case? It was more like, let's find, in a practical way, a specific use case, and then refactor the generic things out of it. And that's, something to me, being specific, being purposeful, having a community, having like real patients who can actually guide you so you're asking the right questions. I'll give you a very specific example. We had gone about this whole tokenization and the patient incentivization in a different way with the neuroblastoma use case. Again, using kind of like actual like US dollars, as a way to incentivize or to, basically kind of give you, if you, for instance, if you fill in a questionnaire, to give you, a certain amount of money that you could redeem through PayPal. But when we talked to the patient advocates, they said, "Oh, this is not good, because everything about the application looks good. We like it. We like the community. We like the questions. But this makes the whole thing sound like a scam. That we don't like. We would freely share this kind of information when we see all this information that you're providing, such as access to, in a curated way, access to clinicaltrials.gov and all the, kind of active trials that are happening. That's the value. But when you add this element of like, we're going to pay you for doing these things, now we're concerned about the legitimacy of this whole outfit. So that was a very real scenario where we then thought through, okay, well, how do we accomplish both of this? And that was, if you like, a pivot for us, and really an awakening of going towards this kind of using tokenization as a model for kind of a royalty program and a longer term engagement that may or may not have a financial, component, and frankly may or may not be online. It could be offline. It could be through an event or a conference. So that really helped us open up our mind, but again, also helped us build something that I think will be better and more adaptable to different kinds of use cases, including, frankly, where patients would expect to get paid upfront. Maybe if you're talking about, I don't know, some kind of diabetes studies or something like that, that's much more conventional in that versus pediatric cancer.
Absolutely, and that's so eye-opening that you generically, if you're designing something and you think you're going to pay someone or give them an X dollar amount, you would think someone would get excited. But like you said, you wouldn't have known that unless you were working with actual patients and families and whatnot. And that is eye-opening. I, personally just to see downloaded the app and it's available on the App Store. Just curious, where does everything stand? Is it, obviously you can download the app, but for example, parents of a neuroblastoma patient, can they sign up and potentially be linked to researchers working on, trials or treatments, or are we not there yet? Or where are you currently with the app?
Yeah, so the app is production. As you said, it can be downloaded freely from either of the primary platforms. And there's a desktop version. And even on the desktop version, we even have a decentralized identity integration, if anybody was really kind of interested in that. So in terms of the app itself, and of course all of the platform and the back-end services, all that is good. What is happening now really is, and this is where the principals have been working or are continuing to work on more basically recruiting, or recruiting is not necessarily the right word, marketing and educating more and more of this community to bring on more patients, right? I think that there is a reasonable number of patients right now, and of course their data, the ones that have consented, has been aggregated and is available for potential researchers. But the principals also know that we need to have more patients and get the word out more. So that's really what's happening right now. It's in the adoption sense, which really is obviously is critical. It's not just about building something. You have to also get individuals aware, and that's part of the challenge of HealthReady, but also really any startup, which is, well, nobody really knows anything about you, but you do need to go to market. You do need to make yourself known, and there, whether it's meeting, for instance, with, which actually I'm doing myself as part of the team, with folks with the Solving Kids Cancer Society or Association, or meeting with specific researchers at some tier 1 pharmas and a couple other academic research communities. That's really the next step. Those are the things that are happening as we speak.
Awesome. So it definitely seems like things are in motion and moving fast, and excited to see the progress over the upcoming months and whatnot. Shifting gears, or maybe not shifting gears, when you and I have been kind of keeping in touch over the last few months, and one of the things you had mentioned was an occupational health application you're working on. Is that something related to HealthReady, or is that a standalone project? Or if you could share more about that.
It's unrelated to HealthReady.
Okay.
But it's more related to OAS. And I think what I was kind of describing at the beginning, and then of course a lot of the podcasts and things you've done in prior times, really there's a theme around things that for instance is blockchain and traceability and immutability and open APIs for interacting with different services. That kind of, well, technology stack is what we would refer to it, but if you're like pattern, really is repeatable for multiple use cases, right? Not necessarily specifics. For instance, the specific questions that we ask for the neuroblastoma use case obviously isn't that relevant to, for instance, a kind of a task exposure risk assessment for an occupational health practitioner. But the underlying technology is, and that's exactly kind of this case. There's a company and a wonderful entrepreneur that we're working with. His name is Jeffrey Miller, but Jeff is one of the world's leading occupational hygienists. So he literally goes to like rigs around the world or chemical plants and other places, and basically works with the employers to basically do task this exposure assessment stuff, but it's a very kind of, it requires high degree of expertise, it's manual, and there's only one Jeff, and there's a lot of work around the world. So the idea really was, well, how can I, this is Jeff's idea, how can I make this more automated, more ethical, more, kind of make the reporting easier, faster, and lower cost, right? And effectively multiply myself to be able to get to all these additional kind of opportunities, but then at the same time, actually also serve the underserved. And the underserved in this case are small and medium businesses that can't really afford a full-time hygienist or multiple hygienists, occupational hygienists on staff. So that was the genesis of the idea. And then working with us at Acoer, really the narrative was, look, we Acoer has built this platform, this kind of open technology, DLT based, distributed ledger based platform that you can build additional kinds of solutions around. And you mentioned HealthReady, that's one example. We do a lot of work with public health. But then in a conversation with him, it turned out that actually we could do the same thing. We could take existing backend services we have built, some existing front-end libraries we have built, and then essentially just kind of with some configuration and one-time customization, build this very kind of non-traditional occupational health solution that is DLT based. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. That work is currently in development, so it's not in production yet. But that's exactly the direction. It's very much just this kind of idea that we can have repurposable technology that makes sense, that is proven, a public ledger infrastructure that is really designed for this kind of reportability, compliance, frankly, traceability. I mean, that's being able to trace these things is actually really important. And why not just repeat it? Why not just build on top of this platform? Because it takes a lot of expertise and frankly quite a lot of time and money to build this. So why would you want to rebuild it? Why not just instantiate specific applications on top of this platform that's built and it's proven and there's multiple production use cases already, and that's the story with that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting, and it goes to show that when blockchain kind of hit the kind of public knowledge sphere and everyone started talking about it, the conversation was it's going to impact every industry and every sector, and that's a perfect example where obviously it's health, but it's going to be occupational health and corporations and oil rigs and all types of settings, and it can make those things efficient and address gaps in the system, underserved or kind of areas that couldn't afford these services before can now do that. And so that's a perfect example of that. And then one other thing you had mentioned was, obviously I believe worked at the CDC years ago, but you had mentioned something about the CDC and public health reporting solutions and allowing that process to be more efficient. If you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, no doubt. So CDC and public health really is, if you like, my first love in this context. I'm a big fan of the CDC and its mission and what it does, and and regardless of the noise and some of the administrative nonsense that goes on, CDC is really a scientific organization, right? It is based in Atlanta, and they are incredibly brilliant and dedicated scientists and epidemiologists and people who really, really understand this area of public health that work there. So, and I had the privilege to learn this myself firsthand when I was at the CDC for a couple of years. So in that way, what I want to do, and this is really a lot of our passion at Acoer, is how do we improve things that we know are broken, not necessarily with the CDC, but with public health in general. And a lot of it, honestly, is around the reporting element, right? It's not necessarily about diagnosis, but and again, COVID, unfortunately, is a very good example of this, and the craziness all of us went through, all the flooding, all the misinformation, and all the different places at different states and localities. It was just very, very stressful for everyone, and certainly very, very stressful for all the good folks who are working at the CDC or doing these kind of public health data work, if you like, really at the local and state level. So really since I would say almost day one with Acoer, that's been our core product, if you like. But we have a technology called Health Data Explorer, and we've been working with the state of Alabama and UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham Pathology for many years, and you may have seen the video that Coinbase did to showcase our work, including our clients' testimony around this. So that whole thing really has been around taking existing mortality data, particularly on substance abuse, as it relates to death due to opioids, as example, heroin, other kinds of substance abuse, and make the reporting of that a lot smarter, a lot faster, a lot more authentic or traceable, with DLT-based real-time again, this data sampling concept, but really ultimately make the lives of our actual users who are forensic pathologists or the chief medical examiner, people like that, not database people, not developers, make their life easier by giving them a tool that, one, and most importantly, gives them their data as soon as possible, immediately when we have access to it, but gives it in beautiful, visual, analytically simple to follow ways, like literally things like word clouds that filter down the, like thousands of records to a few dozens, at a click, immediately. But then at the same time, show to them when they want to see it, but they, by now they kind of have this in their mind, this kind of implicit trust factor that we are behind the scenes literally every time anyone's clicking on a piece of data, we are comparing what we call the in-memory hash of that data, which is like the footprint, if you like, that of the data you're looking at your screen right now. So as example, our Zoom session right now, with the latest footprint that was recorded on a public ledger. Continuously. So anytime they're looking at it, when they're doing filtering, when they're downloading for instance, the autopsy results or the specimen, kind of detailed and doing machine learning or whatever, they can trust that this data is legit. It's not old data. It's not manipulated. It's not broken. And that, I mean, it's huge. And again, our client has spoken about this publicly, just the fact that they can do things basically in real time now that before, really, I mean, it was measured in months, if not years, in terms of getting to the same fidelity of information. Never mind the user experience, because we were, like I mentioned, we're very, very high on not just providing you data, but doing it in the most usable way, as if you were on Google or your social media tool of choice, right? Not some stodgy, quote, healthcare product that was built in, in 1992, which is unfortunately the experience that a lot of people do go through. And I can attest to it from my own days at the agency.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the hospitals I work at uses Meditech. I'm not sure if you've ever interfaced with that EMR. It literally looks like it was built in '85, but what a good use case, that we turn on the news and literally every evening you hear about opioid deaths and how numbers keep climbing and whatnot. And just being able to, track that data more efficiently is a game changer for, the forensics folks, but then they can use that and talk to their, government officials and other health officials and, hopefully kind of change the tides when it comes to this war that seems like it's been going on for as long as we can remember, but progress is slow. So this is definitely, a perfect use case of how this technology can impact things that affect daily lives.
I think that the great thing also, and again, I think this is where we have to think a little bit outside of our immediate kind of things that we know or see. This kind of thing crosses multiple boundaries of society. I give an example. And one of the reasons why there's a lot of value in what we have built and why our clients use it is we can go across multiple jurisdictions, not just one jurisdiction where the data is. So multiple counties, multiple states, and even federally, though we're obviously working right now on that. It's a long road. But, and very, very importantly, meshing in non-clinical data. As example, we mesh in law enforcement data and place of death data and geocoding and geomapping data along with the clinical data. So that's not the information that you will find on a death certificate. You're not going to be able to see hotspots, on death certificates of where things are happening. One of the use cases we're working on right now, in fact, literally as we speak, we're about to wrap it up, is integration, or if you like, this meshing. It's not really integration, it's mapping of this mortality data with district attorney data, where there has been a mortality and there's a lawsuit. So again, there's many examples. There's ER hospital examples that we're working on, but most of the time, I would say almost every time, currently, that work is duplicated. It's redundant. It's literally more and more forms, as opposed to going to an authentic source and just meshing in the data in real time in a way that makes sense contextually. So this is where once you can kind of trust the data and access this information using open APIs, things that allow you to repurpose technology. It's not about like, let's just go to the biggest system integrator or biggest healthcare provider we know and give them millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars because they have, quote, the biggest system. That really is nonsense. That is a story that's beneficial to that vendor, but not to the rest of the world. What we should all do, and it's the direction, I know you also believe in this, is to interoperate. It's to get the data where it is. Just prove your work. Prove that you're not being a scammer. And that's really all we say.
Yeah, it's simple, but unfortunately, in our world today, that comes at a price, and it is not expected, and you can't assume it's accurate and true everywhere. So it's a simple thing, but simple is king. As evidenced by us talking about all of these amazing projects and things that you're working on over the last hour, blockchain, DLT technologies, all the work that is being done in this area is not dead. But if you talk to someone about blockchain or mention NFT or something like that, they're like, oh, that was a scam, it's gone and whatnot. That it couldn't be further from the truth. There were some scammers and bad actors that gained headlines that were in it for the wrong reasons, but there's builders like you and so many others like you that are still doing this good work. And so my question is, just kind of from your perspective, who someone who does this day to day, where does the field as a whole stand when it comes to these technologies, and compared to when the hype was up and it was on every headline a year and a half ago? Are we in a better place? Do we have like the people that actually want to build these tools in this place, and where's the energy at, and just kind of what your sense of where we're at in this space today is?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we could have like a whole hour extra just on that.
Yeah.
And I promise not to get on my soapbox about this, but I'm passionate about this. So look, I think that there's a few misnomers that we do need to put to bed. So let's take, I think certainly yourself, but most of your audience probably has heard of the SPF, Sam Bankman-Fried, and the FTX implosion. Like all of a sudden billions of dollars are missing, whereas they're gone. People have invested in this. So we don't know where the money is gone, right? But here's the thing, and this is the thing that I think people don't really understand when you're talking about blockchain and this whole things that we've been talking for the last hour. Let's say some bad actors did steal that money from various accounts. But the nature of blockchain, certainly Bitcoin, which I think, or an Ether, which is I think that where the majority of those funds were, and Hedera, and pretty much any other legitimate public ledger, not a private one, not like Jim's private, or quote enterprise ledger. That's what I'm talking about. The thing that has been really a fact about this is that there's immutability and traceability. So I'm going to give you an example. If I were the person, who stole, $500 million from these various accounts and siphoned it and put it into my wallet, well, the issue still is, what the hell do I do with it? Because what are you going to do with it? It's not like, it's not like you can go to Amazon and pay, with nobody would do that. It's really, we have seen even smaller cryptocurrencies have become really a holding asset, right? The digital gold of different kind. So the question is, how do you actually take this money and do anything useful with it? Of course, it's irritating, it's harmful that people put in real, like what I call green dollars to buy this digital dollars, like ephemeral things. So that's something that the FBI and IRS and various other people are looking at, right? But in order for anyone to actually take that and like even make a dollar out of it, it has to go through some kind of an exchange. And this is the beauty of blockchain and why I think it applies. And I'm optimistic in healthcare and things, areas where there's a need for public traceability or compliance. Because the second you want to exchange, going back to SPF and the money sold and things like this, the second you want to exchange that to like any currency around the world, you have to go through a central exchange that would take your whatever, crap coin and make it US dollar. But that traceability means you're going to be known. And pretty much all of these, like Coinbase, Binance, all of them have KYC, know your customer, and anti-money laundering, and very, very serious monitoring. So there's good news in that, yes, we heard. Yes, that we're in a bear market. Yes, there was a lot of noise. Yes, there's a cult of personality and random, kind of TV personalities are pumping, things that they have no clue about, and they're getting paid, a lot of money. All that is true. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, because this traceability, this immutability actually is going to force you to become an honest actor, because it's pretty hard to do useful things when you're a scammer, because there's no utility for this. Like you can't, even Bitcoin, you really can't do anything with it unless you exchange it to something else. And the second, and by the way, again, Silk Road is a good example of this. There are many other examples, including like bad actor FBI agents who were caught by IRS because at some point they realized that they wanted to take the money, the digital money they stole, and make it US dollars. And the second they did that, that traceability came back and haunted them. So my kind of rant about this, if you like, is tough times without doubt. But if you can survive the bear market and the noise and things like this, and actually build something of value with real utility, not just some kind of a derivation of another scam or some non-value, cryptocurrency or like the 1,000th wallet or DeFi that really nobody wants or needs. I firmly believe you're on like really solid ground for things that actually make sense in context of real solutions, such as clinical research, such as public health reporting, such as occupational health exposure assessment, and things like this, those kind of things. I believe firmly that, and I think you and I and others will have this conversation in 10 years, and this whole blockchain thing really will be just an embedded part of the trust layer of the internet. And then just like you and I are not speaking and nor should speak about SMTP, and getting to ins and outs of it, we just trust that email is going to get to us, and it's really coming from the people or whatever. I know there's some things you can do, but there's still traceability. It'll be the same kind of thing, in my opinion. But it won't necessarily be straightforward to get there. I think for sure a number of people and companies will kind of fall off of the space for various reasons. Some because frankly they were never really building well enough, and others because of maybe circumstance.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect note to end it on. Optimistic note of, we'll be having this conversation in 10 years, and that means that this industry is going to exist, this technology is going to exist, and that's exciting. But I thanks so much for your time. I always learn so much from you, and I'm glad we did this a second time, and let's do it a third time in another 8 months or a year. And I'd love to know what you're working on then. And until then, I'll be following all of your projects, and I hope those listening will be doing the same. And thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. That was good. I enjoyed our conversation. It's crazy how fast the time went by.